Hello and welcome to The Success Rate. No, you're not seeing wrong. I am not Thuli Magubane, but I do come pretty close. My name is Khanyi Magubane and I'm her sister. My sister has spent a lot of time over the past few seasons of this podcast interviewing people from all walks of life. So today we decided to put her on the hot seat. And well, who would she want to interview her? Of course, nobody but her beloved sister. Hello and welcome to The Success Rate.
Hi, Khanyi. It's good to be on the hot seat for a change. It is strange, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Now, if you were a painting, would you be a landscape, would you be a portrait, or would you be an abstract?
Abstract.
Why?
I think I'm one of those people that is not easy to figure out. It's not surface, and you have to invest time to get to know me, to appreciate who Thuli is. So the same way in an abstract painting, when you first look at it, you're wondering, "Yin lama koporosh?" And the more you look at it, certain things start to come out and you start to appreciate it. And every time you look at it, you see something new. So I think that's who I am as a person. I'm not, a shallow individual. I'm deep. There's lots of, facets to Thuli. And so similar to an abstract painting. So that's why I say abstract.
So pretty much like an abstract painting, the more you look at it, the more you see.
Yes. So even with me.
Yes. The most time people spend with you, the more they get to know you.
Definitely.
Now, there's a reason why I started with the art, right? And it's going to come a little bit later on because, of course, I have some inside info that a lot of people don't have.
Of course. Yeah.
But, having done the success rate, perhaps that's where we should start. What motivated you to start this podcast?
So after leaving radio, I wanted to start a podcast. I knew that that's what I want to do. And I didn't want to do the usual stuff, I think a lot of people want to do gossip or just celebrity profile.
Wouldn't be you anyway.
Yeah, it's not who I am.
Right.
And looking at the podcast landscape, I realized that there weren't many that were telling positive stories. And I think for me, I started the podcast so that I could hear different people's stories, their journey, because we always think that success is unilateral. You must get into corporate, rise up the corporate ladder, and become an executive. Then you've made it in life. But so many people have unique stories and their paths are different. And that's what I want to capture, that whatever path that you choose in life, you can still be successful. So not only have we spoken to politicians, business people, celebrities, but there were individuals that maybe are not as well known, but really have impactful and powerful stories. And I believe that our audience can relate to each and every guest that comes through, that you can find something in each guest's story that you resonate with or you can learn from. And I think we've heard that success, like our byline, it's not an overnight success, or an overnight thing, You have to spend time. And there are many people who do their craft for many years, sometimes decades, out of the limelight. And then suddenly you come into the limelight and people think you've just made it and it was an easy journey. And so for me, it's also to encourage people, and it resonates with who I am. I'm a positive person. I'm always curious about people because I'm a curious individual. So hence the success rate.
U.S. actor Shirley Ralph, she says it taken her 40 years to become an overnight success. And even people like Billy Porter made it and broke out into the mainstream at age 50.
Yes.
And whilst we may have encountered him for the first time then, he'd been on Broadway for years, honing and developing their craft. So for you, what were the building blocks, of honing and building your craft before you became an overnight success?
I'm not sure if I'm an overnight success. But for me, I think I've got different paths and journeys. There is the media journey. And the media journey started back when we were young in Davidton. We'd listen to Radio Bulb.
Yes.
And we're fascinated by the voices that we heard on radio, and obviously later Metro FM. And also having learned that in the past, our father, as you all know,
of course,
our father also worked on radio as a newsreader for a radio station back in the day called Radio Addis Ababa, which didn't broadcast in South Africa, but obviously broadcasts in Ethiopia. And they used to broadcast from the old SABC studios on Commissioner Street. So I think maybe there's something in the gene that led me to be attracted to being behind the mic. So my journey in broadcasting started with UCT Radio. I started there as a student at UCT and loved it. And then started off on commercial radio back in the day when P4 Cape Town just started in 1997.
Right.
And
which is now Good Hope FM.
No, it's Heart FM now.
Heart FM,
yes. Right. And I started off doing a graveyard shift, and it was great for me as a student doing a graveyard shift on weekends. I could suddenly earn a salary of someone who's working while being a student, which meant that it also took some pressure off mom. So, she didn't have to worry about me financially as much because I was earning an income. And once the radio bug bites you, it stays with you. So after completing my degree, I dabbled in radio here and there. I also did Alex FM. I don't know if anyone knows for a little bit. I was on Alex FM, but it wasn't until 14 years later that I went back to radio and I was on Khanyi FM. And by then, also my interest had shifted. I developed another career in business, So when I joined Khanyi, I knew that I wanted to do a show, something around business and money and all of that, because that's my other passion. So whether you're looking at business or broadcasting, each of those has its own journey. And the broadcasting side obviously now has led me to the podcast. And it's great because the podcast, you have carte blanche. You can literally do with it what you want as an individual. And it does become a reflection of who you are as a person as well.
Now, of course, we're talking about the podcast in the now time, but I'd like us to go back, into time.
Yes.
When you were growing up, I'm sure you were asked a lot of the same questions all young kids are. What do you want to be when you grow up? And our questions, you're like, you don't really know, but you just kind of think what your teacher said, could sound like a good career. For you, what was that answer when people always ask you, so what do you want to do when you grow up?
Initially, it was, I want to be a doctor. And the reason for that, I fell off a tree when I was maybe, how old was I? Maybe 6, 7. And I had to go to hospital, get x-rays done, get POP done and stuff. And there was a nice lady that was the doctor that attended to me. So I thought, maybe I want to be a doctor. Until I realized I don't like blood and I'm scared of blood. So I knew that was not going to be for me.
The last thing you want is a doctor that's squeamish.
Anyway, and then in 1986, our parents were building a house and they bought this book with houses and floor plans and all of that.
Right.
And I used to go through it and then I'd be fascinated seeing the floor plan and then the design of the house. So I thought, I actually want to be an architect. So for some time, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an architect. And it even led me to be the first girl in high school to study technical drawing because I knew that I needed technical drawing, in order to become an architect.
Yes.
So I got to standard 6. Yeah, but it's grade what now? I don't know.
Grade 8?
So yeah, I'm a standard person. And then I told them that I want to study architecture, and technical drawing would be a perfect thing for me to study because it's going to prepare me for the career I want to choose. So for some time, it, moved between being an interior decorator or an architect. So I was set on that journey until I applied to UCT to study architecture. And I took a gap year in 1995. So I applied to UCT in 1994 to go and study, got accepted, kind of partial acceptance at the Faculty of Architecture because they looked at my marks. But to study architecture, they need to know that you have a creative bone in you. So you have to submit a portfolio of work, so your drawings and things like that. And I didn't have to submit that until later in 1995, by October 1995. So 95, I took a gap year. I was in Sweden. And during the summer, that's when I was sketching. So I spent the summer sketching and then creating my profile. But then, as luck would have it, being in Sweden, 1995, straight after the 94 elections, Madiba Magic, it's at its highest.
Of course.
South Africa is the flavor of the month.
Rainbow Nation.
A Rainbow Nation. So got invited in Sweden to a lot of events, a lot of places just to talk about what it was like growing up in South Africa, being a young Black South African. I actually even managed to be invited to the Nobel Prizes, which are held in Stockholm, except for the Peace Prize. The Peace Prize is given in Norway. But for the rest of the other, Nobel Prizes, it's in Stockholm. So I got invited to attend that. And I thought, this is fun, man. I could do this for a living.
Let's guess. I want to be a diplomat.
Yes. So that's what happened. I thought I want to be a diplomat. So I called my mom. I was like, Ma,
throw that whole thing about the architecture out.
Architecture is not going to happen anymore. I want to be a diplomat.
Right.
And then started planning my journey as a diplomat. I knew I needed French because French is another language they use in diplomacy. And I found, I don't know how I found it because those days the internet was hardly there. But I found a school in Austria. There's an academy where you could train to become a diplomat. And because it was in Austria, they speak German. And so to get into the academy, they needed you to at least be fluent in 2 languages, English or German or English and French, and then had to learn the 3rd language. So that was my path. When I got to UCT, I was working towards that, becoming a diplomat. So I ended up doing politics, international relations, and all of that. And during my time, that's when I realized, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. I actually want to go into business, And I didn't drop the politics, but I finished that. And I didn't do BCom, but I knew that I wanted to go into business. So I guess as a child, I didn't say I wanted to be a business person. And I think it was also because there's so few business people around us that you don't have those role models going up that you'd want to become a business person. It was only later on that I realized I want to be in business. And I guess that's what I'm doing now.
And also getting into business itself was a journey.
Of course.
Because that's not where you started. You didn't graduate and go straight into business. You also still had to climb up the ladder, so to speak, and pay your dues.
Yes.
What were some of your early day experiences or, that you garnered in terms of building yourself up, your skill base, your knowledge, all the things that you use now in business?
For me, I've always been open to where God leads me. So, maybe some people will be surprised to know that I don't have 5-year plans, 10-year plans, and all of that. People say you must have that, which is ironic because I started off as a strategy consultant. And strategy is all about planning. You need to have your goals and your strategy in place as a business person. So for me, I've always just remained open to God guiding me in terms of where my next steps are. So I started off my career as a management consultant.
Right.
And when I applied, I didn't even know what management consultants do. So, it found me. So I remember a friend of mine told me that his sister works for this management consulting company and they're looking for people and I should send them my CV. And at that point, so after UCT, I'd applied to Procter & Gamble to join their graduate program.
Right.
And made it to the final interviews, but I was not taken.
Right.
And so disappointed. And another friend of mine, remember Lillian?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lillian said to me, don't worry, God has something better in place for you. And at that time, you're feeling disappointed. You feel a bit of a failure because you were looking forward to being on this graduate program, working for a multinational and, starting off your career on a high note. So having applied to the company was called Umbono, I didn't know what management consultants do. And then I realized there was a lady at my church who worked in the same company. So I thought one Sunday after church, I'll go and speak to her just to get more information in terms of what they do so I could prepare myself in terms of interviews. So she invited me over to her house after church and said, let's go to my house and we can talk. She prepared lunch for us. We had lunch. I spent the entire afternoon chatting to her. And by the end of the afternoon, she had practically offered me a job. I didn't realize she was one of the directors
right.
in the firm. And she's like, I'm going to speak to the other directors, but it shouldn't be a problem. Monday afternoon, she calls me and says, can you start tomorrow? So Tuesday morning, I rock up for work, and that's how my career in management consulting started. And 3 months into the job, I realized that I love it. It speaks to who I am as a person. I'm a curious individual, so I enjoy researching and learning new things, and also the change. Being a management consultant. Today, you can work on a project in mining. Your client is in mining. And, 6 months down the line, you're doing a project for a client in banking. And then the next thing, you're doing a project for Eskom. So I love the fact that it changed and the assignments were different, worked in different industries. So that exposed me to different types of industries from a very young age. And I also got to learn how business works, because if you're going to be advising a client in mining and you have no understanding of mining, how are you going to advise the client? So you need to get to understand how mining works, what are some of the challenges and issues in mining, and then be able to resolve some of the challenges that your client is going through. So all of that prepared me to go into business, getting understanding of different facets of business and how they all fit in together. So when I eventually started my business, I went into management consulting because that's what I knew and that was my background, even though I had a stint in banking. But also banking, I would say my stint in banking helped me in what I'm doing now, working with small businesses where funding is such an important issue. And if you're going to be teaching entrepreneurs how to apply for funding, it helps to have sat on the other side as a funder. You know exactly what you look for in an application. So you're in a better position to advise people to say, this is what funders are looking for. And if you're going to position yourself to get the funding, this is what your application must cover.
You've just told us a very fascinating story of how your career started, of the lady that you went to have lunch at her place, and by the end of that day, you were hired.
Yes.
What role does faith play in your life and in your journey? Because what you've just described is what a lot of people who are spiritual would say are destiny helpers.
True.
The people that God puts in our path to propel us forward. And have you had quite a number of those experiences where people just, come, with no ulterior motives, nothing. They're just put there to propel you forward.
To help you. For me, faith is what grounds me, and it's my anchor. And as I said, I don't have the long-term plans. My long-term plan is like, Lord, lead me.
Right.
And and to be led requires faith, because you don't know where God is taking you. And sometimes certain paths just don't make sense initially,
Right.
And there have been individuals in my life that I would say, were destiny helpers. Hazel was one when I started my career at Umbono. When I moved into banking, I would say my first boss, George, would have been a destiny helper, because I moved from management consulting into investment banking. And in South Africa, we have a culture that you must have done BCom, you must come from a commerce background, and I didn't. And interviewed to get into investment banking. And I remember one of the interviews I had was with the head of CIB, and he had worked in London. And luckily, in London, they have investment bankers who are engineers, who are lawyers, who come from different types of backgrounds. So for him, it was not surprising that I didn't have a commerce background. And so I got into investment banking without having a commerce background. And then getting into business as well, I started doing different things, because they say follow your passion.
Right.
And one of my passion is shoes. So I started selling shoes, but that was moving slowly. And a friend then contacted me and asked me if I could assist, because they needed some work done in their firm, a performance management system to be implemented. So that was my first engagement or assignment for my own consulting company. And so that, I guess that person as well helped to turn, the trajectory of my career, to say, hey, management consulting is what you do. And that was when I registered Minfresh in 2010 and got into consulting, and I've never looked back. And even in consulting, you have those certain individuals that would help you to get your next contract. And doing that particular work then exposes you to different sectors. And then you're like, oh, I can do this.
Yes.
And you start having an offering in that particular area. Yeah.
Sounds like an absolutely fascinating career that wasn't just, one-dimensional, but you had to discover yourself.
Yes.
You had to go through the things you don't like to discover the things that you do. Absolutely wonderful. I want us to get into other facets of who Thuli is. At the beginning of the interview, you said Thuli is a multifaceted being. And of course, we've spoken about the one we wanted to know the most, which is business, right?
Yes, yeah.
But all work and no play makes Thuli a very dull.
And she ain't a dull girl.
And she is not a dull girl. She's anything but a dull girl, right? So if you had to describe your interests, I know you love art.
Yes.
And we can trace it back to your early days, where you were discovering your creativity, you love music, you love attending different lifestyle events. But there's one part I'd like us to talk about, your travels.
Oh, okay.
When was the first time you left the country? And what was, if you do remember, what was that experience like?
So I love traveling. And the first experience leaving the country was going to Sweden as an exchange student. I was 17.
Wow.
17-year-old leaving the country.
Most people haven't been even flown yet.
Yes, yeah. And as you would know that we were privileged enough to start flying from a young age. I think you were 3.
Yes.
When we took our first flight, and I think I was 6. So I guess it didn't deter me or frighten me being on a plane for many hours to go overseas. And I actually also thank my mom for being open because not many parents, especially having grown up in apartheid, it's a closed society. You don't know what the big wild world is like.
Right.
And your daughter says she wants to go overseas and live overseas for a year.
Not even a month.
Yeah, for an entire year. So being away from home for an entire year. And I think my mom was confident enough that the way that she raised me, I'd be fine.
Yes.
I'm not going to get off the rails, So I got an opportunity to go to Sweden with Rotary. I was a Rotary exchange student. And in 1994, after the elections, it was the first time that Sweden then decided they will open up exchanges with South Africa again. So during sanctions, they'd stopped having exchanges with South Africa. So when I interviewed with Rotary, my initial country chosen was Belgium, so going to Europe. And then they then came back to me and wanted to know if I'd want to change and go to Sweden instead. So I was like, okay, cool. I don't mind. It's all an adventure. And my program was from January to January. And when I landed in Stockholm, it was minus 10 degrees. So for an African girl coming from, you can imagine how hot it is in January.
Right.
So you've just moved from SA, it's very hot. You get there. And I remember Umakhulu Madiba actually gave me one of her coats, because I didn't own a coat.
Right.
So I arrive in Sweden, I'm wearing this coat. And my first host family was there to meet me. So I landed in Stockholm, and my host family were there to welcome me. And when I was in Sweden, also got a chance to travel a little bit. Got to go to Denmark, and we also went to London, to the UK. And that was a fun trip because as youngsters, we didn't have a lot of money. But there was a ferry that left Gothenburg and traveled overnight to the UK, and we didn't even have enough money to book, a room
Right.
on the ferry. So it was like we're gonna be up the whole night and entertaining ourselves. And then when we got to London, stayed at a hostel, a youth hostel. So I was a youth; I could stay at a hostel. And hostel, you have bunk beds, and you're sharing showers with people. So that's when the travel bug bit, So that was the first time overseas, and then also studied at UCT. And as you know, with our background, we moved around a lot as youngsters, so it meant traveling. And so as soon as I could afford it, when I started working, I then started booking trips overseas, going to different countries, and always went with someone. And I did my first solo trip in 2011. And I think that's when the floodgates
fully open.
Fully open.
Right.
So I think I've traveled to about 35 countries around the world. So which is still...
Give us names. Where?
What? Okay. I've been to, obviously, the US. It's not that it's obvious. Been to the US several times, to several states. Been to Cuba. That was exciting. And experiencing the Cuban lifestyle, the music, the food, the vintage cars. Been to Mexico, loved Mexico.
Right.
And then I guess that's in the Americas. And in Asia, I've been to Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia. I feel like maybe I'm forgetting something else.
Vietnam.
Yes. And then Africa, I've traveled to many African countries. I love traveling through Africa. I just wish it was easier, to travel through Africa. And then Europe, I've also traveled through Europe as well. So the only places I haven't been to as yet is South America and Australia. So those are the next two places I need to conquer.
Well, we know it won't be long, before you're at the airport and traveling.
Yes.
Now, for people who don't love traveling or who've never experienced it, and are curious, why do people love traveling so much? You don't know the people, you don't know the culture, you don't speak the language. Why go to another country? How has traveling enhanced you, who you are as a person, and just your worldview and perspective?
I think I'd mentioned that I'm a curious person. So obviously traveling speaks to that. You're discovering new places.
Right.
Trying new foods, making new friends. So even when you solo travel, it means you need to be confident in yourself.
Right.
In your ability to strike up conversations with strangers. And you also need to be comfortable being in uncomfortable situations. Because if you are in a testing situation and you don't speak the language, you need to figure out how you're going to survive that. And so it has helped me to remain open as an individual, curious, and it has enhanced my life and worldview, in terms of there's so much more to the world than where you are born and where you are living. And also being introduced to new ideas and new concepts. So it has opened me up as an individual. So I'm definitely an open individual.
Right.
I'm not closed up. I'm always willing to try new things, new food, except for liver. That's the only thing I don't eat. So liver in any form, whether it's chicken livers, ox liver, duck liver, any liver.
Right.
That's
liver pate.
That's where I draw the line. Otherwise, everything else I'm willing to try. I even tried that liqueur, where they keep the snake.
Oh no!
It sits in the snake, and
I've seen it.
Yes, yeah, tried it.
You're definitely way more adventurous than me.
Yeah.
Now, for every high, there's a low in life.
Yes.
And it's easy to see the front end of somebody's life because we don't get to experience the back end. Now, this is a question you almost always ask your guests about a moment of failure or about a moment that really represents the lowest part of your life.
So for me, yes, I've had some low moments, and I guess being an entrepreneur, I guess when I started the business, as I said, I tried shoes, I tried selling lingerie. That didn't take off. But for me, the low, I would call a low light, or the lowest point in my life, I would call it my wilderness experience.
Right.
So it wasn't a failure per se, but for me, as I look back and reflect, it was a reset. As I said, I let God lead me. So having started my business, started really subcontracting to other individuals, so doing projects. And there'd be times where I would have so much work that I'd have to turn down projects because I just don't have capacity. And then next thing I know, I'd applied to go and study my master's at IE. So that was a very expensive program. Cost me 45,000 euros. And it was not long into starting Mint Fresh. And so got a contract. And I think 3 or 4 months into the contract was supposed to be a 1-year contract. The client then decides they're going to cancel the contract because they're not happy about X, Y, and Z. And we decided to challenge that to the point that the entire matter had to go to arbitration. So needed to have money for a lawyer and an advocate. And then at the very same time, that's when the taps closed.
Yes.
So you are studying this program, and I have to travel every 3 months to Madrid. And you have to pay for your own flights, your own accommodation when you travel, because it's block release. And then obviously now I have a court case. So suddenly any money that I had quickly dried up.
Right.
And no work was coming through. And it was, I think, during that time that I really had to trust God.
Right.
In terms of, okay, am I being a failure? Was getting into business the wrong thing to do? Should I be going back to work? And for months and months, went through the period where there was no income. And it was during that time that I really saw God providing for me.
Right.
At least we lived together. You managed to shoulder some of the expenses. My cell group leader would collect money and bring me an envelope every month just to contribute towards my expenses. And since I had a driver's license and I could drive and I was healthy, I actually decided to work as a Mr. Delivery driver.
Now, would people ever believe that?
I was a
Miss Success Rate herself.
Was a Mr. Delivery driver.
Right.
Yes. So I went to Mr. Delivery, signed up, and I would go. We sit in the office until you get a call, go up, drive to the restaurant, pick up the food, go and deliver, and then you come back. So it wasn't easy then because obviously there was no app. It was calling. So after every trip, you had to come back to the office to pick up your next order. Whereas these days with delivery apps, you can pick up your orders on the go. So also worked as a Mr. Delivery driver so that I could earn a bit of income, so I could put petrol in my car and be able to attend meetings and do those things. So for me, it was what I needed to do to survive at that point. But it really taught me to appreciate my relationship with God and God's guiding. And it also changed my relationship with money.
Right.
I got to a point where you literally have nothing. And I think that's the point that a lot of people are scared to getting to when you have no money. So for me, I got to rock bottom, no money, and I realized, there's life.
Survived.
And
I got to the bottom that I was scared of, and I was okay.
And I survived.
Yes.
And then since then, God has managed to build me up. And I remember there was one time at church. Church, there's usually an offering, but this one particular Sunday, I remember the pastor's like, I just feel like I need to pray for everyone. Everyone needs to just, come drop a seed so that, God will bless whatever you have. And at the same Sunday, the same sermon, he'd asked if anyone feels bold enough that one day they'd want to, offer R1 million to the church. So I put my hand up and I stood up. And earlier on, when I went to go and drop my offering, I only had R1. That's all I had. I had nothing else. I had R1. Went to go and drop off that R1, but at the same time had faith that one day I'll be able to offer R1 million to the church, and God has blessed me. Many more millions have come now.
Amen. Amen. And I think what I also want to hone in on is the importance of going through those humbling experiences. How do you think it has shaped your character?
For me, I don't think I've ever been an arrogant person.
Right.
It's just not part of my character. But for me, I don't attribute my success or anything that I've achieved to only just being man-made and myself. I truly attribute it to living my purpose and what God has called me to. So there's no way you can be pompous in terms of just doing what God has called you to do. And one of the things that I also teach entrepreneurs about is the concept of ikigai. And the concept of ikigai is finding that sweet spot in life where you're doing what you love, what you're good at, and it's what people are willing to pay for, and it's what the world needs. And I really wish that more entrepreneurs would find their ikigais. That you just don't start another business because you saw Thuli doing it, but you're doing something that you were called to do. You're living out your purpose. Every day you wake up and you do what you do, you're fulfilling your purpose. So I think for me, knowing that I'm fulfilling my purpose does not help me to be proud or pompous. It keeps me humble because I don't know where the next shift is going to be. And God might say, hey, we're starting from scratch all over again. So if it meant that, I would trust God through the process, knowing that if He took me down and stripped me of everything I have and built me up again, He would do it again.
Well, I want us to get into some interesting questions. I think they call the Fire Five.
Yes.
And these are questions that I'm just going to throw out at you.
Yeah.
And let's see how you answer, right? When was the last time you went clubbing?
Oh, okay. I would say when I was in Lagos, which was beginning of November.
Right.
It was beginning of November. We went to a Netflix event. And after the Netflix event, the after party was at a club. So, yeah.
At least there was a purpose to that.
But I have to confess, I slept.
Right. At the gym,
Yeah.
do you prefer cardio or weights?
Weights.
Why?
Yeah, it's easier. I find weights easier than cardio, and you're huffing and puffing, and you're out of breath. And now even with weights, I have to be careful because as I recently went to a physio, I've got one of the discs. It has slipped a bit.
Right.
So the physio told me for the next couple of months, I'm not allowed to lift anything heavier than 5 kilograms. So that's
Take it easy.
It's gonna be challenging. So yeah.
Okay. Let's see what happens at the gym.
Yeah.
So describe your style in one word.
My own
Your personal style.
Eclectic.
Okay.
I buy clothes from everywhere. You know, I buy high-end stuff. I buy stuff from Shane. I buy
another brand for free. Or you buy from your Japanese or Chinese.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also buy secondhand stuff. So for me, it's really about mixing different items of clothing. I can mix a high end and a low end.
Yes.
And my style has evolved over time. You know, I started off as a tomboy. I didn't even wear earrings or accessories. And then I started discovering that, and I go through seasons when I'm collecting different things as well. So from bags to shoes to accessories.
Wonderful. I'm going to add one more.
Okay.
Right? If you had to choose between a holiday to your dream destination, 10 million US dollars, or the original Mona Lisa?
I think I'll go for the Mona Lisa.
Why?
Because there's so much history behind that piece. And I think it's a coveted piece of art. And many people travel to Paris just to see the Mona Lisa. So if they could no longer do it and it's only at my house,
they'll travel to your house.
I'll have busloads of people.
And neighbors would be like, what's going on?
We're here to see the Mona Lisa. So for me, that would be having a piece of history and something that no one else has. You know, $10 million, many people can make it.
Right.
And lose it as well. So that can never be repeated, having the Mona Lisa.
And finally, what makes you happiest? When Thuli is at her happiest, what is that moment?
When Thuli is traveling, having some good wine and listening to some live music.
Yes.
Then I'm happy. You know, I'm mixing a lot of things that are special and I love. So I would say that's when I'm at my happiest. Well, but I'm generally a happy-go-lucky person. So.
Right. Yeah. Optimistic, right?
Very.
Well, I think that's a very good trait. Thank you for allowing yourself to be on the hot seat
Thank
of
you.
your own podcast.
Yes.
And from my side, I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
More wonderful guests. You're in your 3rd season. Can you believe you're in season 3?
Can't believe it. Can't believe it. Yeah. It's been a journey and it's going to continue.
Well, there you go. We were with the founder of The Success Rate, businesswoman, entrepreneur, and she allowed herself to be interviewed, So there is a story that she also has to tell her own story. I was your guest presenter. My name is Khanyi Magubane, and this has been The Success Rate.
First question is, who is your sister's favorite singer?
Favorite singer. Hee, 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 hee.
Ready?
Yes.
Nice.
Let's see. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay, good.
Okay, next question is, what is your sister's favorite destination?
She just
don't
went to 35 countries.
I don't even know what that is myself. Ooh, okay.
Okay,
Make
maybe
it
of
very-
countries she's been to, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's hard. It's hard. I don't even know.
You don't know her favorite country.
No, mine.
Yes.
Mine. So, because, or maybe let's make it where I wouldn't want to go back to.
Okay. Which country would your sister not want to go back to?
not want to go back to?
I enjoyed it, but there are certain reasons why I don't want to go back. I've told you this before.
Really? Hish. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, so he said Bali. Zanzibar, really?
Zanzibar. No, because of the poverty
Yes.
and everything, and yeah.
You're living in this luxury in the
Yes.
in the resort.
As soon as you step out, so
Yes.
All right, next question is, what did your little sister do as a little kid that was super embarrassing?
Her.
Is it for both of us? For only two? Yeah.
But she's answering what I used to do.
Yeah, that was super embarrassing.
What was embarrassing to you?
So all these questions are for two, right?
What
But she's
was-
the older sister.
But as a little kid, what was the one embarrassing thing that she done?
Okay. What's the one embarrassing thing that I did as a kid?
Can you ask me how I used to taunt her?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. We know this one. I was your youngest. Yeah.
Chasing her with a snail. Okay,
What did she say?
snail. Okay, so you don't like snails.
And I used to chase her with them because we had plenty of snails in Durban.
So next question is, what's the last movie that you watched?
Last movie.
That I watched.
In a cinema or even on Netflix?
Anyway.
Sure, I don't know.
Or series?
Okay.
Series,
Series.
I can.
Okay,
I can.
that I've just finished. Yeah.
I can kind of.
That's what I just finished. Yeah.
Oh. All right. Okay, three more.
Yeah. All
What's
right.
the silliest thing that makes you laugh?
What's the silliest thing that makes me laugh? I can't even know. I don't even know this one myself. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So Khanyi has said social media videos.
Okay, I just say I laugh easily.
All right. Next question is heat wave or cold front?
We talked about this one
Heat wave or
just this morning.
did we?
No, you were not here. Lisha and I.
Let's see. Heat wave or cold front. Okay.
She should know this one.
Only because I know my sister hates the cold.
Yeah.
And the last question is, what is Thuli's hidden talent?
Ooh.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm going to take a chance with this one.
Okay.
You said, so Khanyi said cooking. Okay.
Yes.
So do you see, Kata?